You see, in a world that's shifting faster than truth can travel, the rules of trade ain't just numbers on a page anymore. They're power plays, silent wars. And in the middle of it all, while the U.S. throws its weight around, Canada listens, learns, leverages, because sometimes the quiet ones don't just survive, they win. When the world sees chaos, the wise see patterns. And in the whirlwind of America's increasingly erratic trade policies, tariff threats, broken alliances, backroom deals, and isolationist terms, there lies something few are talking about, an opportunity. For Canada, this isn't just noise at the border. It's a moment to step forward, quietly but decisively. The U.S. has long dictated the rhythm of North American trade. NAFTA, then USMCA, all framed under Washington's terms. But when a country as powerful as the United States begins to disrupt its own credibility, when it tears apart the agreements it once wrote and weaponizes its own currency and partnerships for short-term wins, others start to take notice. Investors, supply chains, emerging economies, and yes, neighbors liking it. Disruption creates hesitation. It forces global manufacturers, financial giants, and small businesses alike to reevaluate where they anchor their risks. When the U.S. becomes volatile, companies start looking for stability. In Canada, with its calm tone, rule of law consistency, and smart diplomacy, becomes a quiet harbor in a raging storm. Imagine a CEO in Franklin or Tokyo watching headlines about another round of U.S. tariffs on its own allies, or a surprise policy shift on exports overnight. That CEO starts asking a simple question: where else can we set up shop that's close to the U.S. market but not at the mercy of its chaos? Time and again, the answer turns north. Canada doesn't just offer geography. It offers predictability. It offers trade agreements with Europe, with Asia Pacific, with the Americas. It offers access not just to the U.S., but beyond it. And it offers a workforce that's educated, adaptable, and multicultural to the core. Think about what that means when supply chains are being reimagined in real time, when companies are near-shoring to bring production closer to home, when just-in-time models are being replaced by just-in-case strategies. Canada becomes more than a backup plan. It becomes a strategic launch pad. Let's talk numbers. Foreign direct investment into Canada has been rising quietly, even as global uncertainty spreads. Sectors like advanced manufacturing, green energy, AI, and agritech are attracting global attention, not because of wild incentives, but because of one core promise: stability. And in the world of trade, stability is the rarest currency of all. When the U.S. flips policies every election cycle, or tweets markets into chaos at midnight, Canada doesn't need to shout. It simply needs to remain steady. It needs to show that deals made in Ottawa last longer than campaign season, that economic decisions are built on data, not drama. The irony is, the more chaotic U.S. trade policy becomes, the more valuable Canada's quiet strength is. Diplomats may not say it on record, but boardrooms understand it well. Partners want someone who doesn't blink, who doesn't use tariffs as tantrums, who doesn't weaponize uncertainty as a tactic. Canada also benefits from something deeper: trust. While the U.S. has started to look inward, pulling out of climate agreements, suspending WTO rulings, and threatening global norms, Canada has leaned outward. It's built coalitions. It's signed fair trade pacts that prioritize sustainability, labor rights, and transparency. These aren't just talking points. They're the new gold standard for ethical trade. And the world is watching. Even within North America, Canada has played the long game. While political bluster dominates headlines in Washington, Canadian negotiators have built quiet bridges, state by state, province by province, industry by industry, because Canada understands. The real game isn't in the spotlight. It's in the margins, in the details, in a trust built when others are busy burning bridges. And then there's technology. As the digital economy grows and data becomes the new oil, Canada's approach to privacy, AI, and digital infrastructure is attracting a different kind of trade. The flow of ideas, of intellectual property, of high-value partnerships that don't just move goods, but shape the future. This is where disruption becomes a lever, not a setback, but a signal, a moment when the world begins to tilt and those who keep their balance can rise higher than before. The U.S. will always be a giant, but even giants can stumble. And in those moments, the ones who step forward with quiet resolve, not panic, often become the new center of gravity. Canada's not trying to replace the U.S. on the global trade stage, but it doesn't need to. All it needs is to be reliable when others are unpredictable, smart when others are impulsive, open when others close their doors. In a world where headlines are stolen by bold declarations and impulsive moves, Canada's strategy doesn't roar, it resonates. It doesn't flash, it functions. While others gamble on attention, Canada bets on endurance. And this is no accident. It's the product of a smart policy framework that understands something many superpowers forget. Real power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers and wins. Canada's long game is built on foresight, not flair. When nations chase short-term growth through protectionism or currency wars, Canada plants seeds in clean energy, in immigration reform, in education, in diplomacy. The yield? A society that grows stronger quietly, compounding strength in the shadows of louder players. Where others aim for quick wins, Canada aims for lasting leverage. They trade. While some countries are tearing down global agreements, Canada is stitching them together. It's a partner in the comprehensive and progressive agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. It has deepened ties with the European Union through CETA. It continues to nurture USMCA with an eye for diplomacy, not dominance. These aren't just deals. They're bridges. And bridges hold even when tides rise. Policy decisions in Canada aren't reactive jolts to polls or tweets. They're crafted with the patience of a nation that knows reputation compounds. Whether it's climate commitments, healthcare, AI governance, or indigenous reconciliation, the Canadian model isn't to rush toward the spotlight, but to move in line with principle, with consistency, and with the vision of what the world might look like a generation from now. This kind of power is harder to see. It doesn't come in the form of aircraft carriers or volatile markets. It comes in the form of diplomatic trust, in the confidence that international partners place in Canadian negotiators, in the credibility that attaches to every signature under the maple leaf. Canada's immigration policy is another quiet weapon. While other nations clamp down, fearing outsiders, Canada embraces diversity as strategy. It brings in talent not because it's trendy, but because it's essential. Engineers from India, scientists from Nigeria, AI researchers from France, they're not just welcome, they're woven in. And over time, this has built an economy that's not just resilient, but creative, adaptive, global by default. When you look at Canada's approach to technology, the long game is there too. Instead of rushing into surveillance, capitalism, or letting big tech run wild, Canada has prioritized digital rights. It's asking the harder questions early about data ownership, about algorithmic fairness, about digital sovereignty. While other nations treat tech like a sprint, Canada is building a marathon path, one that safeguards both innovation and values. The same applies to energy and the environment. Canada knows it can't abandon its resource economy overnight, but it also knows the future is clean. So while others deny the science or flip-flop on commitments, Canada is engineering the transition. Hydrogen strategies, carbon pricing, EV infrastructure, these are signals, not stunts. They show that Canada is investing in a reality most nations are still arguing about. Foreign policy, too, reflects its silent strength. Canada rarely leads with ego. It doesn't need to. Instead, it listens, builds consensus, steps into mediation roles. Whether it's peacekeeping, multilateral talks, or development aid, Canada plays the role of the quiet anchor, the one steady hand in rooms filled with rhetoric. That kind of behavior builds memory. Allies remember it when times get rough, and that memory becomes soft power, the kind that lasts far longer than military budgets or election promises. What's striking is that Canada rarely advertises its power. It doesn't need to inflate its image. It lets results speak. A strong banking system that withstood the 2008 crisis. A housing debate that, while complex, is being met with real policy experimentation. A public health model that, even in its flaws, shows a commitment to equity. These aren't viral stories, but they're foundational ones. The long game demands patience. It demands the discipline to say no to shortcuts, even when the world's moving fast. And Canada, with all its humility and restraint, has shown it can do just that. Because in geopolitics, as in life, the ones who wait and plan often end up building what the reckless can't hold for decades. Canada has stood in the shadow of a powerful southern neighbor, linked by history, trade, defense, and a shared border that stretches longer than any on earth. That closeness brought prosperity, but also dependency, a reliance on American markets, American capital, and American decision-making. But the winds have shifted. What once felt like a stable foundation now looks more like a fault line. And as uncertainty radiates from Washington, something remarkable is happening quietly. The global flow of investment is tilting north. This isn't an overnight transformation. It's the result of years of groundwork, years of proving that Canada isn't just a safer bet, but a smarter one. As volatility becomes the new norm in U.S. policy, with tariffs used like weapons, alliances turned into bargaining chips, and domestic politics spilling into global boardrooms, Canada's calm, rules-based system stands out like never before. Investors are looking for more than growth. They're looking for stability, integrity, and long-term return. And in today's climate, Canada checks every box. Global capital chases certainty. When the U.S. wavers on climate agreements, tax laws, or international norms, investors start scanning the horizon for alternatives. They don't want to pull out of North America, but they do want predictability. Canada offers access to the continent without the chaos. It offers a dollar that's stable, a political system that's functional, and a society that welcomes talent instead of fearing it. We're seeing it already. Major automakers are choosing to build electric vehicle plants in Ontario. Tech giants are expanding their campuses in cities like Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. Clean energy firms are pouring billions into hydrogen, solar, and wind projects from Alberta to Nova Scotia. Venture capital, which once flowed almost exclusively into Silicon Valley, is now trickling and in some cases flooding into Canadian startups. This is not about beating the U.S., it's about offering an alternative path within the same economic zone. For decades, Canada was viewed as a branch plan economy, a place where global firms set up subsidiaries, not headquarters. But that's changing. Now, multinationals are setting up leadership hubs here. They're parking decision-making power north of the 49th, not as a backup plan, but as a strategic reorientation. Trade agreements are a critical part of this equation. While the U.S. walked away from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, Canada stays in and helped lead the charge to keep it alive. While the U.S. antagonizes the World Trade Organization, Canada continues to support it and advocate for reform. While others pull back from global collaboration, Canada signs new deals, not only with economic powerhouses, but with emerging markets hungry for partners who don't bully or manipulate. Immigration is another magnet. At a time when talent is the new currency, Canada's open, points-based system has become a model for the world. Engineers, doctors, scientists, and entrepreneurs from every continent are finding a home here. And when people come, capital follows. Startups grow, networks expand, innovation clusters form. Investment isn't just about money, it's about momentum. And Canada has it. The country's commitment to environmental, social, and governance standards, ESG, is also driving the shift. Global firms are under pressure to show they care about sustainability, labor rights, and inclusive growth. In Canada, those aren't afterthoughts. They're embedded in policy. This gives companies a reason to invest, knowing their values align with the jurisdiction they operate in. Infrastructure plays its role too. Ports, railways, digital networks. Canada's poured billions into making the country a gateway, not just a destination. And as Arctic routes open, as the Pacific Rim becomes more central to trade, and as U.S. logistics slow under political gridlock, Canada becomes the natural corridor for a new kind of commerce. It's not just capital that's moving. It's confidence. Confidence in a country that doesn't chase headlines but builds foundations, that doesn't intimidate but attracts. And in this era of geopolitical volatility, that quiet strength has become magnetic. The world is watching, and more importantly, the world is acting, rerouting plans, restructuring portfolios, and rethinking where the future will be built. In a world riddled with instability, the question isn't who shouts the loudest, it's who adapts the smartest. While powerful nations scramble to defend old positions or reclaim slipping dominance, Canada is doing something different. It's not resisting the chaos, it's leveraging it. This blueprint begins with clarity. While other nations use ambiguity as a tactic, Canada uses transparency as a tool. In trade, in immigration, in environmental standards, Canada has made its rules clear. It hasn't just opened its doors, it's clearly defined how and why those doors operate the way they do. In a landscape where the rules are constantly shifting, that clarity becomes leverage. It attracts business. It instills investor trust. It gives multinational firms the confidence to plan long-term, knowing they won't be blindsided by political mood swings or ideological whiplash. Canada also understands that uncertainty reshapes the global playing field. When traditional powers like the US or UK turn inward, when tensions in Asia rise, when the EU is gridlocked, that vacuum doesn't go unnoticed. But Canada doesn't try to fill it with force. It fills it with presence, with dialogue, with reliability. Whether through multilateral diplomacy, development aid, or trade mediation, Canada shows up not with dominance, but with stability. And in a volatile world, stability is power. This leverage extends far beyond economics. Canada's social model, multicultural, inclusive, and rooted in rights, is becoming a form of global influence. Where countries fracture along lines of race, religion, or ideology, Canada demonstrates a functional, pluralistic society that doesn't just tolerate diversity, but is built on it. That's not just a moral stance, it's a competitive edge. Talent from across the globe sees Canada as not just a destination, but a future. And where talent goes, innovation follows. Maple Blueprint also includes a deep bet on sustainability, not just in the environmental sense, but in policy durability. When governments change, Canada's institutions stay strong. The civil service, the courts, the regulatory bodies, they keep the system balanced even as the political winds shift. That's the kind of governance model that multinational corporations, international investors, and global think tanks are starting to study, because in an era where democracies wobble and autocracies harden, Canada offers a third model: steady, democratic, and adaptable. Innovation is another pillar. Canada isn't trying to become the world's factory. It's trying to become its lab, its launch pad, its proving ground. From artificial intelligence in Montreal to clean tech in British Columbia, from biotech in Toronto to aerospace in Quebec, the country is positioning itself not just as a participant in the next economy, but as an architect. And it's doing it not with grandstanding, but with smart incentives, academic partnerships, and talent cultivation. Education feeds this loop. Canadian universities aren't just ranked, they're integrated into national strategy. Research funding, startup incubators, and international student pipelines are treated not as isolated initiatives, but as leverage points. The future isn't built just by policymakers. It's built in labs, lecture halls, and coding boot camps. And Canada's blueprint recognizes that if even geopolitically, Canada plays a long hand. It doesn't chase dominance in NATO or the G7, but it builds coalitions. It doesn't provoke China or antagonize Russia recklessly, but it reinforces the rules-based order with diplomacy and consistent values. It's not neutral, it's principled, and that, in a world swinging between extremes, is a powerful position. All of this adds up to a strategic posture that's often overlooked because it doesn't conform to traditional metrics of power. But look closer and you see it working. Investment is rising, migration is diversifying, innovation is accelerating, reputation is strengthening, and through it all, Canada doesn't overplay its hand. It simply plays it better, piece by piece, move by move, turning unpredictability into positioning, chaos into clarity, and global doubt into national momentum.